everyone. Just get my clicker. The power that you feel when you have one of these in your hand is quite remarkable. Thank you very much, Hazel, for the introduction and for inviting me to come and speak to you all today. Thank you also for the generous invite to dinner yesterday evening. I really enjoyed the chance to get to know a little bit more about the world of systems engineering and to speak to a few of you. I also really enjoyed the after-dinner speaker as well. There were some themes that came out of his talk, which I think you will hear echoed this morning as well. Although I felt like Jeff, the engineer, I think it was Jeff who was responsible for being the thorn in everybody's side, got a bit of a bad ride through that. Hazel's touched on this already, but I just want to start by acknowledging Stuart Arnold, the namesake for this morning's talk. As you know, and as I absolutely recognise from having heard the Ruby package sponsors speak this morning, I had a lot of words that I didn't understand in the context that they were provided, so I'll ask you to bear with me on that. But not being from the world of systems engineers, I wanted to learn a little bit more about Stuart. It seems no overstatement to say that he is one of the most influential figures in systems engineering, an author of the international standard for systems engineers, and someone who challenged systems engineers to think a little differently. The influence he created during his life and his work continues to the benefit of systems engineers everywhere today. So, the title of this year's conference is Broadening Horizons. I would say to you that Broadening Horizons isn't just about what you see, it's about what you do with what you see, how you respond to it, how you might go about your jobs, or if we're being profound, your lives slightly differently as a result of what you encounter. I'm not going to try to change anybody's lives today. That's absolutely outside my skill set. But I hope, like Stuart, I can invite you all to think a little different with me about something we may have in common, a challenge. And that is the challenge of value, or more specifically, how you communicate the value of your work to your organisation. So the title for my talk this morning is You Can't Value What You Can't See. This isn't about pounds or pence, although money always comes into these things. It's about what you and your teams bring to your organisations every day. It's about what makes you worth keeping around. So while I am inalienably a lawyer, there's no law in today's talk, so everybody can breathe a sigh of relief on that front. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about me to kick us off, and how I ended up in front of 240-odd systems engineers. So, same person. I'm Sam, I'm a solicitor, and this is normally where I pause and people boo and hiss because everybody hates lawyers, right? I've worked in-house in the public and third sector for the last 15 years. Before that, I worked in private practice and had a reasonably unpleasant time, which is why I now work in-house. I'm General Counsel at Loughborough University. I'm an executive committee member of the Association of University Legal Practitioners, so the lawyers version, the higher education lawyers versions of IFSI. I'm a dad, very proud dad. I'm a husband. I'm also a very proud husband, just in case any of you happen to know my wife. And I really like Star Wars, but I'm not going to cram any kind of Star Wars related analogies into my talk. I'm also, quite accidentally, a legal LinkedIn influencer. Don't worry, there's no TikTok dancers. I'm not going to get you doing anything like that. But I am, particularly because the frame is at my feet, going to try and get a selfie in towards the end of the session. So when you see the slide, that's your time to be really interested in something on your phone if you don't want to be in the picture. So this sounds made up, right? It's because it is. Somebody somewhere in the world of legal marketing has created essentially a competitive system for lawyers who are active on LinkedIn. So someone somewhere is always making money out of this sort of thing, aren't they? And you have to kind of come to terms with that. In the last quarter, I ranked 4th, which I was quite surprised about. And it could mean nothing, but what it's meant for me is it's created some opportunities that otherwise wouldn't have presented themselves, including being here today. So it was this post that Hazel serendipitously stumbled across. And undeterred by this frankly startling image, Hazel went down a rabbit warren of reading some of my posts on LinkedIn, including my thoughts on what in-house lawyers don't do enough of. Hazel felt then that there was a shared challenge and then asked me to come and speak to you all today. So I'll get rid of the picture of me eating cake in a moment. I really like cake, by the way. I should have put that in my bio too. Let me introduce the challenge of value as it presents in the legal profession. Lawyers have a bad reputation. Recognise any of these? So the one on the left has a reputation for playing fast and loose with the rules. The one in the middle is a lawyer to a drug cartel. And the one on the right is, at best, Springfield's most incompetent professional. Lawyers are expensive. We're not as fast as people would like us to be. You will probably, in your personal lives, deal with us in one of three circumstances. Moving house, dealing with a divorce, or dealing with the death of a family member or friend. None of those are stress-free experiences. None of those lend themselves to looking favourably on the profession's role in those archaic and painful processes. So we've established the media hates us. Even the bard had it in for us. And that was in the 16th century. Doesn't feel like much has changed. So I'm going to make you do a little bit of work this morning with me, but this is the easy bit. So, without this being too threatening in an image for you, can somebody shout out some stereotypes or some thoughts that they have about lawyers? And I won't fight back, I promise. Boring? Okay. That's a good challenge. What was that? Okay, any more? I can take it.
Good at chess.
Good at chess? Okay, well, do you know what? I actually don't know how to play chess. That's something I can put on my PDR for next year. Cautious, generates work, expensive, unapologetically. And lawyers that never ring you back. Okay, interesting. Some of that is definitely born out of personal experience, I can tell. None of it was as hurtful as I thought it was going to be, actually. So thank you for not being... maybe you were responding to Hazel's request for professionalism, even though I invited you to step over a line there, I think. So lawyers are generally really good at what they do. They're really good at lawyering. Some lawyers are actually really good communicators, others less so. There's an awful lot of work that happens between your first meeting with a lawyer, giving them your instructions, through to the work product, whether that's a contract or a house transaction or a divorce. But we don't always show our clients all the work that goes on between point A and point B. I've been unfortunate enough to see in other organisations legal teams totally wiped off the table. They were perceived as blockers. They were perceived to be risk averse, something that we heard earlier. People didn't understand what they were delivering for their organisation. In some cases, they were absolutely doing what they were needed to do. They were integrated, they were collaborating, but they were hiding their light under a bushel. They were lost in their organisational wilderness, almost because they did their jobs too well. They were too efficient. They were too quiet. So what's this got to do with systems engineers? So, as Hazel's already alighted upon, some of you may find yourselves in similar positions as the minority groups within your organisations, misunderstood, undervalued, maybe at risk, because your organisation doesn't understand how critical you are to their success. If the fireproofing wasn't working in this building, you might, if it's working well, you won't know it's there. But you'll be really, really pleased when something starts smouldering that it is working. The difference being that, and this is a tiny bit of law that's sneaking in, building regulations require that you have fireproofing in buildings like this. But having a team of in-house lawyers, having a team of in-house systems engineers isn't a legal requirement. Unfortunately, there comes a time, I think, for all of us where we have to justify our presence in our organisations. Now, having been very clear that I'm not from the world of systems engineers, I thought I knew what systems engineering was about, but I didn't feel confident in that. And actually, it took me a little while to realise with some embarrassment that I already knew some systems engineers. I've worked with Michael Henshaw at Loughborough for 8 years, and if I'm totally honest, I probably stopped thinking about anything in the Professor in Systems Engineering title beyond the word engineer. Sorry, Michael, that's not intended to be disingenuous. So in my ignorance of your world, I did what any self-respecting professional would do in 2025. I asked Copilot. And what was really odd is when I asked it what systems engineers were, it told me you were all lawyers. So all that mean stuff that you said about me. I suspect, and we've heard garbage in, garbage out already this morning, I suspect we all know that how you prompt AI is absolutely critical to getting good stuff out. So this was my prompt. I say this is my revenge now because I let you have a go at lawyers. I acknowledge that this is unfair. I was actually looking for some icebreakers to open the session. But actually, the answers were fascinating, and I'm going to just take you through a couple of the examples that it came back with. You'll be pleased to hear that in a very creepy sense of balance, Copilot told me what the reality was behind the stereotypes. So I'll be interested either with sort of murmurs of assent or grumbles of dissent as we go through, whether or not these resonate with you at all. So, the first one, the over-documenter. Systems engineers won't do anything unless there's a diagram, a flowchart, and a written specification. A few nods. The reality, systems engineers appreciate the value of clarity, of reproducibility, and that comes from writing things down. Now, you might be aware that lawyers quite like a written thing. We like clarity. We want to know exactly where our client is trying to get to and to help them work through that problem. And that output might be a contract or some written advice, but we want that clarity. Secondly, the integration whisperer, which I quite like. It's got a good ring to it, hasn't it? Systems engineers don't build things. They make other people's stuff work together. Now, I like integration whisperer. Feels like it's got a good marketing ring about it, but I do feel that there's something a little disingenuous about that description. So the reality, systems engineers are the glue that hold complex systems together. That's much nicer, isn't it? But doesn't the glue feel a little bit like fireproofing? No one's looking at the fireproofing. They're looking at everything around it. No one's looking at the glue. They're looking at the bits that are held together by it. As an in-house lawyer, a massive part of my job is bringing the right people together around complex problems, helping colleagues to navigate systems of governance, of law, regulation and approvals. So I like to think that actually we're all integration whisperers in our own ways. Thirdly, the it depends expert. According to Copilot, ask a question and they will say, it depends, before launching into a 10-minute analysis. Yeah, somebody like that one. What's the reality? Systems engineers understand that context is everything in systems designed. You are trained to ideate the worst case scenario and design it out. You need all the information to be able to do that. When this one came up, I thought, I'm really amongst my people now. It depends is the favourite response from a lawyer if you've ever asked them a question. Contracts are not the length that they are because we are paid by the word. So let me just deal with that myth as well. But because we're having to draft for ambiguity, for different potential outcomes, and for the human factors that sit between all of those as well. And finally, And I think you'll like this one, the quiet genius. Systems engineers sit silently in meetings, then solve the problem in one sentence. I mean, what's not to love about that, right, as a stereotype? The reality, systems engineers are deep thinkers who prefer precision over noise. Well, I don't know about you, but I'll take quiet genius any day of the week. And in true Bond villain style, while we're vilifying lawyers, I don't think we're so different, you and I, systems engineers and lawyers. There seems to me a very clear overlap with the very nature of systems engineers and lawyers. So acknowledging the distinction between stereotype and reality, I suspect there is a tangible risk then that all of us in our careers have or will feel at some time misunderstood, unfairly slighted, undervalued, maybe even unwelcome in some meetings or settings, all while doing the job that we are employed to do and doing it well. We're all humans. None of us want to feel like that in the workplace. So welcome. You are ascending the hill that I have chosen to die on. This is my soapbox. In-house teams, whether lawyers or other professionals, have a duty to communicate what you do, the value you add, and to make yourselves relatable to your peers, colleagues, and bosses. It's essential, not only for your success, but for your very survival. If we don't help other people see what we're about, they will live with their assumptions, their grievances, the stereotypes. They'll develop a narrative about us, one which might be untrue, it might be hurtful, and it certainly won't be helpful in getting your job done. When you work in large and complex organisations, but you're not sales or on the shop floor or essential like finance or HR, with the greatest respect to my finance and HR colleagues, there's a real risk of being labelled an overhead. In difficult times, people look at the bottom line and they will ask, what value are you adding? It's unlikely that anyone will notice the perfectly oiled, silently spinning bearing that keeps everything running until it's not there, like the fireproofing. In-house teams will only survive if they tell their story. We are not budget lines, we are human beings. We have to proactively tell the business what we're adding. We have to advertise. Now, I don't need to tell a room full of engineers that a well-oiled and well-run machine doesn't generate very much light and sound. So I suspect we all very quietly get on with our day jobs, head down, being effective, delivering on what our organisations want us to deliver. We've already heard that systems engineers prefer precision over noise. But I'm going to ask you this morning to get a little bit comfortable with me around the concept of light and sound being a good thing. That without a bit of light and sound coming from your teams, you can't begin to tell your story. Now, I love this quote from Lawrence J. Peter, and if anybody saw the Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary on Netflix, you might have seen it feature in that, not to give my sources away. Early to bed, early to rise, work like hell and advertise. Now, what I really like about this quote is it covers two key points. Firstly, you have to nail the day job. You have to be getting the work done, doing it well, doing it the way that your organisation needs you to. And so I'm going to assume that everybody is doing that. And the second point, you have to tell people about it. Show of hands, who's seen this year's John Lewis advert? Okay. Keep your hand up. Keep your hands up. Keep your hand up if you cried when you watched it. God, you really are cold-hearted engineers, aren't you? It's just me. I'm not going to out any of the people who kept their hands up, but well done for feeling. So, tears or no tears, in 2 minutes of near-perfect advertising with no dialogue, John Lewis tells a story through their adverts. A story which connects with their target audience, 40-something men and women with a family. I suspect if you did cry, you're a dad or a mum. And through that, they evoke a feeling, a memory, a feeling of nostalgia, of safety and connection, and they don't mention their products at all. There is nothing in that about their products, because that bit, the quality of the product, the service that you get, that bit's all assumed. The advert sells a human interaction, and they do it every year, and we fall for it every year. And in fact, we rush to go and watch it on YouTube if you're as daft as I am. And they do it with 120 seconds of storytelling, of humanising connection. Now, unless you've got a branch in every city, you do need to spend some time communicating the good work that you do, and the value that your team brings, the quality of your product, and use that to start to build connections within your business. And these will pay dividends in the long term. But those connections are personal, and you should do it through storytelling. Esther Perel is a psychotherapist who specialises in relationships in the workplace, and she tells us that storytelling is the bridge to connection. She's not wrong, because good stories are about people. The John Lewis advert was about people, but the clothes being worn, the gifts being given, the sofa they sit on, they're all there in the advert, but they weren't the focus. The story was told through the lens of people, and the product was the secondary element but the product was still there. We need to put our people back in our professional stories. It's not enough to just talk about your work product, because that's not going to be relatable to everyone. It's not going to connect with people. I'm going to share with you a couple of angles on how we've approached this as a team at Loughborough's Legal Services, and the benefits that it's brought us, which I'm pleased to say are wider than just survival. Dale Carnegie, famous author of How to Win Friends and Influence People, encourages us to dramatise our ideas to help us communicate those to others. So I'm going to tell you my story, and I'm going to tell it to you with a little bit of drama thrown in. So, many years ago, a disillusioned lawyer left a job in a legal team in local government for a job in a university, helping them to sort out their contracts. A university nestled in the Midlands, in a town that's quite difficult to pronounce for non-native speakers. The king, or the chief operating officer, of this university thought he knew what lawyers did, and he got our hero involved in some cool projects. He found himself in an environment that led him to thrive, to grow, to develop out into the lawyer and the leader that he wanted to be. After 2 years, they made him head of legal services and let him advertise for some more lawyers to keep him company. He was happy. But this university, warm and friendly as it was, didn't have a lot of money at hand. Other universities and law firms and businesses nearby with bigger castles and bigger war chests were offering more shiny things, and no one got off the train as it sailed through the unpronounceable town. Our hero became troubled. Spot the AI-generated images. The university hadn't had lawyers working there previously. Not everyone appreciated the work that they did. Some colleagues, it felt to our hero, specifically came to joust with him rather than work together to find solutions. Serendipity brought some excellent lawyers to the team, but when they left, replacing them was hard. The money, the geography, the hidden nature of lawyers working in universities all worked against him. The king, remember, chief operating officer, expected our hero to keep providing the best legal service in the East Midlands, despite these challenges. Our hero thought hard about how to tackle this problem, how to bring the right people in, how to get them to stay for as long as possible, and then, in a eureka moment, he cracked it. Advertising. Our hero realised he was selling an opportunity, not buying a person when recruiting. An opportunity to work in a brilliant place with great terms and conditions, a handsome boss, exciting work. So he started to tell the story of what a brilliant place it was to be, using social media and news items and word of mouth to spotlight the work being done by the team and the opportunities this presented for lawyers, the exciting projects the team worked on, the partners they worked with. Over time, the story travelled across the land as the tales of the team's quests and successes became the thing of legends. The silverware wrestled from the hands of bigger teams, the underdog story come true. And in time, the reputation of this small team grew too. People said nice things internally and externally about them. They asked for the team to be involved in projects early. They welcomed their support. They understood the value of having legal involved. They thanked them for their help. When they went out to recruit, they were inundated with applications. When they asked for investment in new people or technology, the keepers of the purse said yes. And they all lawyered happily ever after. Now, I've channeled my inner Dale Carnegie by telling you that story in a creative way. But the truth is that we have, over time, built up the reputation of our team. We've thought about how we promote and sell ourselves. We've increased our visibility, and it has really paid off. In the last 6 years, between a role that we advertised in 2021 and 2025, we saw a 500% increase in applicants. We've doubled the size of our team over its sort of existence. We've been asked to do more by the university. We've been asked to be less reliant on external support, which has meant that we've been able to develop the lawyers that the university needs. We've kept the right people in the team for longer. I don't believe in keeping people forever. I just want to keep people for as long as we can have a good, productive relationship. And because of that investment in the team, we've managed to protect our budget, which has enabled us to do more team development, training, travel to conferences and events so that we can make sure our knowledge is as current as possible. And no one has called us an overhead in years. People have a positive predisposition towards us now. It's greased the wheels for us. It's made our jobs easier to do. And it's made it a nicer place to be. So what does this mean for you? What could you do with this? I'd encourage you to start small. Start achievable. You don't need a grand strategy. If anybody tells you you need a departmental marketing strategy, don't waste your time doing that yet. Just take a first step. Right. If you're able to stand, please do so. Just checking that you're all paying attention. This is not all going to be about LinkedIn, by the way. And this is a good opportunity to do some stretches. You guys start early. 8:45 is early for a session, I thought, for a conference, so well done. Right, you may sit if you do not have a LinkedIn account. Splendid. If you are standing, you may sit down if on your LinkedIn account you do not have a colleague that you work with or have worked with on your LinkedIn. Okay, fabulous. You can all sit down now. Everybody, with about half a dozen exceptions, have an immediate opportunity to influence the perception of others about you and your team. Your LinkedIn account is a vector of engagement with colleagues, with contacts, people you might work with on a day-to-day basis, people that you might not work on a day-to-day basis with, but you might come across from time to time. Some of the people you could reach might be decision makers. Just think about that for a second. They might hold your fate in their hands one day. Recruitment, budget, investment, survival. LinkedIn could be your first step to improving their perception of you and your team. A quick win. Now, LinkedIn won't reach everybody in your organisation. It doesn't need to. You can use it as a platform to build your reputation, one positive impression at a time. You can hone your voice. You can share something about you as a person as well as a professional. You can talk about the work that your team is doing. Highlight and praise your colleagues, lift other people up. A rising tide lifts all boats. Never before has it been so acceptable to be yourself professionally. We never used to talk about bringing your whole self to work. We used to talk about separation between work and life outside work, and that separation is good and important for lots of reasons. But you don't have to be two different people anymore. When I first started out, it felt like we did have to be a work person and a home person. You can now be, I give you all permission to be your authentic selves. And if that makes you cringe a bit, I'm sorry, it's not the language I'd choose to use for it. But if you use LinkedIn or similar platforms, you can find common interests or challenges with your colleagues within your network. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn talking about parenting, about men's mental health, as well as being a lawyer in higher education. You could talk about caring responsibilities. You could talk about neurodiversity. They can help to build connections with people, professional ones, but human ones too. And you can also use it to build curiosity in others into your area of work. And you don't have to aspire to be a content creator. You don't have to be an influencer, whether it's made up by somebody else or otherwise. Don't buy a ring light, don't do live streams. You just have to be yourselves and talk about the work that you do, what you bring to your organisation, the problems you've solved, the activities you've facilitated, the value you've added, in your words, your story. It doesn't have to be super personal. You could talk about being at this conference, and you've already been encouraged to do so, so I hope you all will. You could go home this evening and write a post on LinkedIn about the new contacts that you've made here, about the things that you've learned, about the beardy lawyer who made you reset your password on LinkedIn because you've not used it for so long. It doesn't have to be cringe, but the first time you do it, if you haven't done it for a long while, it won't necessarily feel 100% comfortable. Embrace it if you can. That's what growth feels like. That's what change feels like. And it's not all about LinkedIn. Let me just be really clear. I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that, but I do genuinely believe it provides a platform that provides quick and easy wins to start talking about your brilliant teams, the work that you do, and to get your message out there. There are other things that you can do, of course, other mediums to communicate through. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So let's spend a bit of time talking about what, where, and how. How you frame your communication is important. It's worth spending a bit of time, if you are going to be deliberate about it, thinking about your what. Now, our attention spans as human beings have never been shorter. TikTok, Reels, too long didn't read, elevator pictures. The world doesn't feel like it has time for length anymore. Brevity remains the soul of wit. So bearing that in mind, I'm going to ask you some fundamental questions and challenge you to answer them concisely. Now, there are pen and paper on the tables in front of you, so you might want to grab that. My first question to you all: how do you explain your job to your nan? Now, I really like this question because it makes you think about how to make your role accessible to the broadest audience of colleagues and peers. What's the language you use to make systems engineers understandable to plebs like me, non-systems engineers? I'm not calling you nan a pleb, sorry. I also know that there's more than one type of systems engineer, so I know it will vary. My nan-ready sentence: I support my organisation to make informed decisions to help keep our staff and students safe. It's very kind of like high level, enough for her to go, oh, that's lovely. Did you want tea? Does anybody feel that they'd like to share a nan-ready sentence for their work?
I have this because I work in STEM, so I have to do this. So I work with people and computers to make sure that the right parts go on the right aircraft.
Love it. Did everybody hear that? She works with computers to make sure that the right parts, computers and people, to make sure that the right parts go on the aeroplanes in the right order? Right area, right, thank you. I saw another hand, I think, at the back.
I help people solve problems.
Perfect. Simple, relatable, comsy, brief. I think that's what we want. So let me move you on to the next one. What's the one thing you want people to know about your role? I've spent a bit of time talking to you this morning about stereotypes and assumptions that people have. This is your opportunity to challenge those. What's the thing that you deliver that doesn't get recognised but you want to communicate? Mine? Lawyers are problem solvers. A bit like lawyers and systems engineers are not that different again. Anybody prepared to share with me the one thing they want people to know about their role?
Remove risk from projects.
You remove risk from projects. Lovely, that's great.
We're here to help, not add paperwork.
We're here to help but not add paperwork. One more? We facilitate. Fabulous. Have you all done marketing training? Because you're all very, very on brand for these sorts of things. And then finally, bringing us back to this concept of storytelling. What's your superpower? What's the thing that you are most proud of? What's the thing about your job that really turns you on, the sexy thing? What do you want other people to know? My superpower is you can give me a whiteboard and a pen and I will be able to fix anything. I love a whiteboard. It's really weird how much I enjoy whiteboarding. All right, superpowers. I'll take 2 or 3.
Translator.
You're a translator. Excellent.
I can see the connections.
You can see the connections, like X-ray vision. Excellent. Creative and curiosity at the back. Brilliant. These are all things that you can use to build how you present your brand, how you present yourself externally. And I just think they're lovely questions to start with. And if any of you lead teams that you want to spend a bit of time thinking about this, take those questions and work through them with your teams, because somebody came and did that with me and my team, and it really, really helped us. So having thought a little bit about your what, the where is probably easier to address because you've got a range of options available. I've already talked about LinkedIn, but you can share your messages on other social media platforms. I used to use, well, I'm going to call it Twitter because I refuse to call it what it's called now, but I used to use Twitter a lot before it became a horrible cesspool. But there are no doubt other social media, Freudian slip, other social media available for you. You can use staff newsletters if you've got a website or industry press. We've heard about one of the sponsors this morning was looking for speakers, looking for authors for articles. It's up to you. If you've done something amazing or something that you're super proud of or somebody in your team has, think about submitting for an award, either within your organisation or within your industry. I love an award, and it was such a privilege to be here for the awards being given out last night and then promptly taken away, but to be given back this morning. Have the award winners received their awards back yet this morning?
The signature of the lawyer was missing.
Right, okay. Well, I'll hang around afterwards to do what I need to do with them. Our team has now received 5 shortlistings or wins in different awards, and I'm really proud of them. They're almost, not quite, but they're almost a quality mark. External validation from the team. They're also really good for the team's morale and for retention. They give you something to talk about on corporate platforms and to spotlight pieces of work or individuals who you're proud of and who you want to lift up. And if you submit for an award, guess what? The best thing that you can do is tell your story. Explain the challenge, how you addressed it, the difference you made, and weave the human elements into it. Put humans in the story because that's what will make you relatable to judges. They might use facts and figures as part of that, but also use quotes and testimonials to support it. I bet you lot love a bit of data, don't you? If it's in a spreadsheet, it just doesn't work for me. Sorry, I'm Word all over. But apparently, and I have tried to validate this factoid, you're 22 times more likely to remember a story than you are a fact. So if you've got facts and data that need to fit into your award submission or your story, wrap it with the human context. In relation to how you do it, it's going to be different depending on your area of work, how senior you are, the focus of your work. Horses for courses. I was running out of stock imagery ideas at this point, I think. So if you work in defence, you're not going to be able to talk openly about everything that you do. But you can share your insights and your learning. You can say how proud you were to be part of a project which has been launched by some kind of company-sanctioned press release. If you're early in your career, you have a massive opportunity to build your personal brand and develop your network, learning and connecting along the way. I know I'm pushing my LinkedIn agenda, but I can't tell you how much I learn through other people's LinkedIn posts. It's not just about, oh, I'm so proud to be here, or I'm so honoured, I'm humbled, or there's real good content out there if you follow the right people. If you're in an academic role, you'll probably already be aware it's a great way to showcase your research, connect with peers, find collaborators, particularly in industry. It's as true in academia as it is in business. People buy people. If you're in a more senior leadership role, I've already covered some of the benefits that you can get from raising the profile of your teams around recruitment, retention, budgets, investment, and importantly, favourable decision-making, trying to engender that positive predisposition towards you and your team. So thinking about this can help you to build essentially your virtual shop window. Is it on your website, or is it just what people perceive of you on social media? You can build it up through awards or sharing insights, whether you're selling yourself as a candidate, your team as an asset, a vacancy as an opportunity. I wanted to give you an example of a specific project we undertook at Loughborough and how we used it to build those connections with our peers. It's something that very much brought our personal and our professional lives together. It told a story, and it helped actually to make a difference. So people generally end up in the law because they're passionate about something. They might find that along the way, they might not know what that is at the outset. For one of my lawyers, Helen, her passion was climate change. She had 2 boys. She wanted the world to be around for them for a long time, and she realised that she had a responsibility to do something for them personally, but also professionally. So she led us to spend some time as a team thinking about what we would do. Now, you're probably all familiar with Stephen Covey's circles of influence. We were a team of 5 lawyers at the time in an organisation of 3,500 staff. So we had to be really realistic about what it was that we could achieve, what we could control. We thought about it and realised that our roles gave us an opportunity to try and engender some institutional change, but we felt it needed to be aligned to our role as lawyers. The bit that we could control were the template contracts that we maintained. So we introduced climate-compatible drafting. These are clauses that encourage procedures within the contracts, including dispute resolution, notices, that kind of thing, to be executed in a way that is better for the environment. So trying to do things online, not print so much stuff out. Independently, these clauses would have a microscopic impact. But combined with other provisions and combined with an institutional drive towards trying to address net zero, it could become a cultural and procedural force for good. We looked wider then, beyond that piece of work, and thought, how could we influence this change a bit broader? And we thought the best way to do that was as colleagues, as people, not as lawyers. So we made personal pledges, because we thought it was important to us as individuals too, and we shared them. We posted internal blog posts and newsletter articles with the sustainability team. We took to social media to share what we were going to do as private individuals, and it started a conversation. We talked about the changes to the contracts, but then we also said what we were doing ourselves as people. Mine was to recycle soft plastics, which just means that I have some very, very large bags of soft plastics in my garage. They will get recycled at some point. We then came back to it 12 months later and did a retrospective, which was another blog post from my colleague Helen, about what had worked well and what hadn't, so that we could share our learning with others. And we got a really good response. Others shared their ideas and their tips for being a climate change activist in their daily lives. We had different conversations with colleagues and indeed with contracting parties when we were negotiating with them. We were congratulated for being progressive. Lawyers, progressive, fancy. We apparently inspired others to action. it was apparent then that this small thing, which was aligned with our work, but also very much about us as individuals, as relatable fellow passengers on Starship Earth, had made an impact on our community. How we shared what we did created a force multiplier effect. It reached colleagues we wouldn't necessarily normally engage with, it contributed evidence to the university's commitment to net zero, and it anchored us as team players in the wider organisation. And we got a nod in the AULP Awards in 2024 for the Community Contribution Award. And guess what? We talked about it on LinkedIn in news articles. And the awards now sit behind my desk in the office. So when I'm on Teams calls, they're all there in the background. It turned out then what we could influence was much greater than what we thought. And what we couldn't control or influence was not as big as what we thought. We had more power than we realised. And through all of this, our colleagues felt they knew us better. We were more credible professionals in their eyes. They trusted us more. Colleagues will assume you're getting the professional bit right, whether they like it or not. But this was a way of connecting with colleagues and stakeholders without it being forced or uncomfortable. It was real and it was relatable to them. And it was not dissimilar to the John Lewis approach that we talked about earlier. So, as I near the end of my talk, I have to acknowledge that you could, of course, go home and do absolutely nothing with what you've heard today. As we mentioned earlier, Stuart Arnold wanted to challenge systems engineers to think differently. And if I can be so bold as to invoke his spirit, what would Stuart want you to do with what you've heard today? If you go home and put one post on LinkedIn, contribute one blog post at work, put your team forward for one award, what are the benefits that could come for it? What have you got to lose? You have to do what feels right for you. But returning to my soapbox, I implore you to own your narrative. Tell your story. Tell the business about the value that you bring, because if you don't, somebody else will apply their narrative, their assumptions, their stereotypes. And they will never tell the story better than you can, because you know the value that you bring to your organisations. Thank you very much. Right, if you don't want to be in the picture, look busy on your phones or something. And I want you all to say IFC, okay? 3, 2, 1, IFC! Thank you very much. I don't know if I've got any time for questions.
We've got time for one or two questions. Just giving you a microphone.
And I can make myself available straight afterwards.
So come over there first.
We had a panel discussion yesterday about the brand of systems engineering, and one of the things that came out of it was that I think a lot of us shared. It was that sometimes we can come across as quite arrogant. Not to bring that back up again, but you're talking about kind of sharing our story and telling people about it, but how do you avoid that kind of being seen as constantly talking about yourself and being quite arrogant when you are trying to sell your services?
So I would say that it comes back to this slightly uncomfortable concept of authenticity. People, in my experience, who we perceive to be arrogant or aloof, it's because we don't understand them, because they're not communicating what about them, they are hiding behind a professional line. I mean, lawyers, as we've established, have a terrible reputation, and a lot of people perceive lawyers to be arrogant or overconfident. But it's probably because they don't understand that lawyers are hamstrung by a set of regulations, which mean that they can't speak as freely as they'd like to about certain things. So again, I think it comes back to this concept of understanding and reminding people that you're a human, and adding those other dimensions. I've posted about my own mental health on LinkedIn, and people that I've had perhaps difficult interactions with in the workplace before have come up to me and had a totally different conversation with me about it. That it's changed that relationship because they understood a bit more about me as a person. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should go out and start venting their spleen on social media. Share what you are comfortable with. But again, putting that person, putting humanity back into it, I think is really, really important.
So following on from that, I mean, point taken about authenticity and showing a human side, that does help you become more relatable. But one of the really nice things about LinkedIn is it's one of the social medias that are reserved where you're judged only on your professional ability and how good you are at your job. And you're not, therefore, judged on your lifestyle or your background or your ability outside of it. So my concern is, in the interest of trying to be authentic and showing your human side, are we not then going to start judging people on their backgrounds and actually inviting discrimination?
So I think that's a really, really interesting question, which has got... So LinkedIn has changed its algorithm recently for how it puts work front and centre. Previously, the algorithm would learn what you wanted to see. Now it's very much focused on professional expertise, which means that if you post stuff on LinkedIn which are memes and are funnier, you're going to get less engagement. And actually, if you're able to be seen as an expert in a subject area, whether that is parenting while working, whether that is being a systems engineer or working in a particular area, that's going to be more likely to get greater reach now. So there's a little bit of a systematic counter to your point. I think the other thing is we have to do what feels comfortable for us. And there are people who are very, very open about their personal experience on LinkedIn, and some aren't. And those who are more open, who get more reach, do occasionally encounter negative engagements. But I have generally found it to be an incredibly supportive network of people where actually the diversity within it is really, really valued. It comes down to people again, but the negative side of people, that someone somewhere is going to be a dick at some point, if you excuse the turn of phrase.
It's not so much that, so I'm getting quite irritated at the moment. People in my sphere are posting things like, oh, I've just climbed a mountain, oh, I've just done this thing for charity, oh, I've just done this amazing holiday. You know, yes, it shows their human side, but not everyone's able to do that. And, you know, I would like to be judged on how I do my job and my work, not whether I'm able to climb a mountain in my spare time.
So I just, in case not everybody heard that there is a tension then between people sharing a lot of things that are non-work related, which might be leading to people making value judgments. Forgive me, I'm paraphrasing about an individual, rather than measuring them on the quality of their work. And I suppose there is a risk of that, absolutely. The bit that I would say then is it's in your gift to make sure that you are presenting your work and the value that you add to counter that, and you share the bit about your role that you're most proud of and that you most want other people to know.
One last very brief question.
Hi, Paul Davis, PPI part-time, and full disclosure, Loughborough University part-time. A little story, I've been around in COSI for a very long time. You've probably heard a bit about the Systems Engineering Handbook. Yeah. The very first edition of that came out in the 90s. People were working on it, but it was then held up for about 4 years because Lockheed Martin's corporate lawyers says, actually, there is intellectual capital embedded in what we're saying here. We, Lockheed Martin, are better at it than anyone else. Why would we share it? Okay, time has moved on. It has got published in the common interest, but every time we share stories, we're short of case studies around the papers in this conference because there is embedded intellectual capital. It's not capital that you can patent because it's codification of best practice process. So we've got a bit of a dichotomy between sharing our stories and what our corporate lawyers allow us to release. And we can both be rude about accountants, can we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'd
okay.
encourage that,
So,
actually.
what's your view from the point of view of a legal profession and trying to trade that balance?
So lawyers are cautious in their nature. And I had a conversation in my team when we first started talking about this sort of thing, and they said, well, what about legal privilege? So there's client confidentiality and legal privilege. We can't share stuff. It will be privileged. And I said, well, why don't we just go and have a look at the corporate accounts and see what the corporate accounts are sharing? And we can talk about our part of the story that the corporate accounts have said that can be released. We have the nature of being in a higher education institution is to share and to work with colleagues and add to the it's grandiose to say it, isn't it? But it's in our Royal Charter to add to the sort of sum of human knowledge. So it's different in a commercial context. But I would encourage people to have not jousting conversations with your lawyers, but to have a conversation with them about, okay, well, you don't want us to share all of that, what can we share? Where's the bit of the story that is okay for us to externalise, and what are we saying in other parts of the organisation that are similar? We've talked before about if you're in defence, it's going to be difficult for you to share all of that. But there can be learning and there can be insights that come from a particular piece of work which wouldn't be protected, wouldn't be the sort of know-how that the IP lawyers would start wringing their hands over. So encourage them to explore the art of the possible. Okay.
Thank you, Sam. Can we show appreciation again for Sam?